It has been a real pleasure working with this class. This class has been incredibly organized and very focused on the task at hand, which is to produce the exhibition, and have had the energy to work in conjunction with that on a daily basis on completing their work. And it's a memorably diligent, focused, and productive class. It's been a delight working with this class.
So right now I'm working on a piece called Mac and Cheese, and it's a replicated Mac computer. So look, this guy here. And I'm making it look out of cheese. Yeah, and so my work is really motivated by Western culture and this idea of it's a joke that we're all in on because we're both so fortunate and unfortunate to like live in a society of such excess and where things are iconic because we're afforded that like affluence. So yeah, hence my mac and cheese. So after I plaster it, I'm gonna do a couple layers of plaster, sand it down until it's really nice and smooth, and then I'm probably gonna do a coat of resin that's like colored like cheese, or maybe I'll put real cheese on it. Because that might be a little bit more exciting. So this bad boy, this one I'm going to take 2 pieces of styrofoam and stack them on top of each other. The long part of the screwdriver is gonna be like twisting back around itself and screwing a screw into itself, and it's gonna be called Go Screw Yourself. And they're all jokes we understand because they're play on words in Western culture that we all we all collectively understand like as a society, and I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's good, see? It wasn't that hard.
I'm scared.
It wasn't that hard. Isn't that bad?
Are you guys twins?
Yep.
Identical?
Yeah, it's like Harry Potter and Neville Longbottom, born on the same day, same time, you know?
That's how it works. Pretty simple.
Twins, okay, bye.
My work this term is based on family. I have a very strong connection with my family. They inspire me to do most of what I do because I have a very large family, the oldest of 5 siblings. So I feel like there's a huge responsibility on myself, but also I feel like I need to make my parents proud. So all of my work is based on my connection with them and how I relate myself to them and how we identify ourselves. We very constantly have different comments about all of our facial features, and so I like to highlight the differences between all of us and kind of just the funny things that are different and similar about all of us together. So this term, my work, I've been trying to highlight the relationships that I have with each individual person through the use of color and texture, kind of thinking about textures that kind of remind me of those specific people and then putting them in portraits of themselves. So it's a personal reflection, but it also is portraits of my family in a different kind of non-traditional sense. I've been going through a series of different photos that I've taken by myself, and then I have been altering them. The first project that I did, kind of more of an experimental project, was I took candid photos of everyone at our large events like Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I interplaced features from everyone's faces into other people's faces. So like you would have my nose on like my grandma's nose and vice versa. And it was just kind of funny to see the differences that it would make in our faces, but only our family would recognize the differences, whereas people who don't know us wouldn't really get it unless you could compare them to something. So that was something interesting too, because it was just, they're similar but very different in that sense.
I work with social systems that are either unwritten or not really spoken about. They just kind of are implemented, and people that are using them are not necessarily aware that the system is in place. So just like for different examples, the system that we use for workers, so people that are doing some jobs are down here on the totem pole, whereas others are up here, and we treat people according to where they work and how they work, I guess. And it's just, I guess my work is pointing out the system so that people can really give some thought to what's happening and how the systems are functioning, because to me, like, I have my own thoughts about it, but I think it's just important to me that people are realizing that there are systems in place that are not being recognized, and so I think they need to be pulled out a bit and just thought about a bit more so that we can make efforts in like either maintaining them or fixing them. I work mostly in printmaking. I started in printmaking because I love the repetition and the way that it so closely mirrors the lifespan or the patterns of human like development, and the way that the patterns are kind of like reproduced, or the patterns are systemized in a certain way. And I think printmaking mirrors that well, because you are making something over and over and over again. But then I've also expanded into soft sculpture in repeating things over and over and over again. So I'm still sticking to like kind of the basic principles of printmaking, but not necessarily doing printmaking. But
work is very personal, and it's based on people that I guess have passed away in my life. And it's just measuring the time that they lived, so not focusing on their accomplishments or their personality or who they lived with or the family that they had, but more based on just the time itself. So if they lived for 20,000 days, or the years they lived, or the months or the weeks. So I'm kind of just focusing on showing that measurement in different ways. So whether that be using numbers, using ticks, and I'm going into hole punches now. So it's a different way to showcase it. So the way that I do my work, I don't really focus on the final product. I'm actually more focusing on the process and making it. So I have an idea of what it will look like, but it's definitely not, like, I don't really know. And it's more just like manual labor. So it's actually like, this takes me hours to do, and it's more just relaxing and getting involved with myself and just sitting down and producing work. So it's just more labor intensive than actually what the end result is. So this was actually one of my first pieces, and it's more, again, it was with the labor and everything, and it was probably the most personal because it was my grandmother. But it's basically just looking at the days that she lived and just placing that on one sheet of paper, and how you can put someone's life on like a rectangle. Like, it's just like a small sheet of paper, and it's kind of morbid and sad to look at, but then it's also it's just reality. So,
well, my work is about transition between making reference to art history, but at the same time taking a new approach into still life. So I try to incorporate compositions from other type of artists that work with still life painting. So like Juan Sanchez Cotan is the biggest influence on my art practice, and Juan Sanchez Cotan, it will be Jonas Wood and George Brooke. They are my biggest influences. The process for my paintings, I draw them first. I do all the sketches first, and then I start layering. I do kind of a collage. So I start playing with the collage and see where the composition can take me. Try to create a really balanced composition. And then I choose my colors, try to get the solid colors. I use tape for the beginning of the shape. Then after that, I do a freehand. But for the beginning of the shape, I like to use tape, so it comes out a little bit of the canvas as well. Because when you paint it kind of builds a edge on it, so it makes it look like it's coming out a little bit more.
So I have kind of a variety of disciplines. I like to do sculpture, and then my drawings are based off of my sculptural work, and the sculptures are inspired by the paintings. So they all kind of feed into each other. The sculptures are fossilizations of clouds, and the paintings are obviously kind of more realistic depictions of clouds mixed with linear forms. And then the drawings are topological maps of the sculptures. A sculpture this one was the first one, so it took me probably, I want to say 3 weeks, because it's layers upon layers of plaster. Like this one only took 2 weeks. But the paintings can take anywhere from a week to 4 weeks, like that kind of range.
How long about that one?
This one took a month and a half, just because it's bigger. I mean,
what's the process like of making one of these?
So they start off as chicken wire forms, and then after that I layer clumps of paper and I pour plaster over, So this is an example of kind of like the first layer of what something like this would look like. This has probably 5 layers in total on it, and this is just 1 layer. So it's the forms of the paper that show through the layers.
Why are you so interested in clouds?
That's a good question. They've always just kind of been inspirational to me, I think, just because of the way that they catch the colors of the light, and like they just are natural beauty at its finest. Like, yeah, they're just really beautiful. And they always are constantly changing and shifting. It's kind of a nice metaphor for like human life in general and spiritual life.
When did you know you wanted to be a sculptor and a painter? Because that's kind of like a strange duality. Because usually like people are more one or the other.
When did I know?
Or how did you stumble upon sculpture? Maybe it's better.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we all are painters.
I got to a point in the paintings when I kind of just felt like everything that I needed to say was being said, and so I wanted to translate it into 3D just so that I could express my ideas in a different way, I guess. And it took a long time to kind of get to this resolution. I tried a bunch of things, like I tried resin, like this is clear resin. I've been experimenting with different materials like insulation and like burlap, stuff like that. So these ones took a long time to get resolved, but I guess it all just came out of just wanting to express myself in a different form.
I'm interested in the experiences immigrants go through when they move to a new place. And specifically, I'm looking at language and how that shifts their identity and the way they experience their world. So there is a theory called linguistic relativity that basically states that the language you speak influences how you think and how you experience the world. So I'm really interested in how that shifts when you move to a new place and you learn a completely new language, and in the process you kind of lose your original language as you pick up the new one. So I made a computer program that measures how fast people think in their different languages. So this is like bilingual people, or people who speak more than 2 languages, sometimes 3 or 4. So it basically measures how fast they think. And then I get all this data and I translate it, I visualize it in different ways. So what I've done is I've done paintings where I visualize the data and color code it and just basically create these portraits of people. And I've also done drawings where I translate the data, and right now I'm working on knitting. So I take a word that they've done, and let's say it took them 800 milliseconds to respond to that word, let's say a table. And then I take that and translate it into like a longer period of time, so 8 minutes would be equivalent, and then I knit for 8 minutes, and then I have these long knitted strings, and they're just hanging and visualize the data. I moved to Canada when I was 14, so I went through the same thing, and I didn't speak any English when I came here, so I had to learn everything. So that was kind of hard for me, so that definitely influenced my work.
I just wanted to make sculptures at first, and then this term I discovered that my sculptures are actually drawings because they're made of lines, and then I decided to make wall drawings out of my sculptures, so now I'm entering into that. But my work is about, I guess, the connection with nature and human embodiment, following the golden ratio, and how every aspect of nature follows this really special number, and so I'm exploring that with the shapes that I'm, I guess, building my sculptures out of.
What are the materials you're using?
Coconut branch, copper wire, paper, thread, and I'm putting it together with glue.
I'm building houses from my past, also buildings like churches, also houses that I've lived in throughout university that have a really significant meaning to me, or at least many things that happened in these houses or these buildings have been prominent to who I am today. It was second year university and I lived in this house. There was many things that happened in this house, good and bad. I'm not really sure why I'm making it. I'm still in the process of figuring out why it's so significant to me and what is the most significant part of this house to me, but hopefully by the time I'm done building it, I'll figure it out. First, what I did was I thought of the house in my mind and I tried to remember every detail of the house on the outside, like what did it look like, where things were, like how many windows were on that side of the building. And then I sketched out what it was supposed to look like in my sketchbook and I went and recreated it. And afterwards I would look at the actual houses and I'd go and revisit these places and take pictures of them and paint exact replicas of them in watercolor.
What is that?
That's my bedroom currently. It was an exploration of what I was trying to do, I guess. I wasn't really sure. I knew I wanted to build houses or homes or replicas of my life of some sort. So I thought, what better way to represent my life than build my bedroom? And yeah, so I did that, but I felt like I wasn't really going anywhere, so I went on to building actual houses.
What's your favorite space?
Sorry?
What's your favorite space?
Like,
To be?
oh, my favorite space to be?
Yeah.
Obviously my bedroom. I have this light, we call it the highlight, and it's all fuzzy and it's pink and it's awesome. That's all I'm gonna say about that.